Hello, everyone. This is Justin, your host, and I'm here with my co-host, Tyler.
Here I am.
Welcome to our very first episode of Classic Vinyl Podcast.
Our debut pilot.
Yes, it is. It's our podcast where we're going to be reviewing many albums from a lot of your favorite artists from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. We're going to get into a lot of album reviews. We're going to get into artist reviews.
Yeah.
Musician reviews.
Sure. We'll talk about anything related to the great musicians and music of the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s.
And wherever it takes us.
Great music. Yeah.
So
and this is an excellent album to start off the podcast.
This is a good album, and
yeah.
Give you a little backstory on it. This was the very first album I purchased on CD.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
It's what got me into classic rock, this band, and the band we're talking about, of course, is The Doors. Mm-hmm. We're going to review their very first album, which is self-titled, called The Doors, which Tyler thought was quite arrogant of them.
Yeah, is that a common thing for...
It's pretty common. You know, another thing, like Led Zeppelin's first album is, actually known as Led Zeppelin 1 now.
Oh, is it?
But it truly was just a self-titled Led Zeppelin album. It just became one because their second album was called Led Zeppelin 2, and then 3 and 4. But
I guess it makes sense to name your first album after your band to get your name out there and to make it more searchable.
Well, and you can take it both ways. I mean, in a way, it's not even a self-titled album. It doesn't have a title to the album, It's just The Doors. Famously, the Beatles have a self-titled album. It wasn't until their 10th album, but it's also known as the White Album.
Yeah.
But that was a self-titled Beatles album. But let's get into the review of this album that we just listened to. Like we stated in our review, or in our preview, I should say, Tyler's heard a lot of these songs on the radio, so he's very familiar with all your famous songs of the 60s and 70s and 80s.
I've heard about half of the songs on this album.
Yeah.
That's pretty much where I sit.
Exactly. Well, you've heard them all now.
I've heard them all now, yeah. But this was my first time on about half of the songs.
Yeah. Well, it's an excellent album. Like I said, it was the first album I got on CD. It's still one of my favorite albums of all time. So anyways, this album was released on January 4th of 1967. The Doors recorded this pretty quick, like pretty much within a week.
Oh.
And a lot of that was because these were a lot of the songs they were playing in the clubs, the Whiskey and Whiskey A Go-Go on the Sunset Strip in L.A. and a lot of the other places they're playing. They had, they'd been recording this album for a long time, essentially, or practicing the album to record a long time. So once they did get to the studio, it was fairly easy to track it down, in about a week.
And so these are kind of their common, more well-practiced hits, you'd say?
Well, I wouldn't say hits, but I mean, when you get a band that hasn't been signed yet and they're touring around the clubs and things, you see a lot of this. They've been practicing these songs for years.
Okay.
So, anyways, they recorded it, the whole album, in August of 1966 at Sunset Sound Recorders in Hollywood. It was produced by Paul Rothchild, which all their albums were produced by him with the exception of their last album, L.A. Woman. A lot of people, rock experts, rock and roll music experts, consider this one of the best debut albums of all time. And it's especially pretty strong coming from an American band, because obviously this is January 67, so 66 has just ended, but the Beatles were huge. A lot of your,
that British invasion was going on.
Yeah, a lot of the British invasion was going on. There wasn't a lot of huge American bands at the time, and the Beatles were running the charts still, but the Doors were a big step in a direction for the American bands.
Yeah, they finally came out with something to one-up Herman and the Hermits.
There you go. Yeah. So this album is the Doors' best-selling album of all time. I believe it has sold a little bit over 15 million copies worldwide now. It was recorded by Elektra Studios. Okay. Elektra Records, that's who signed them. They were a small label at the time. I think the Doors helped propel them. They're a fairly large, common label now.
That's a symbiotic relationship between them.
It certainly is. So this whole album was recorded on 4-track which was pretty common at the time. In fact, Elektra, famously had to purchase a new 4-track recording machine for this project, which cost him $10,000 at the time. I don't know what that would be now, but I'm sure.
That'd be pretty expensive. It'd probably be about, between $250,000 and $500,000, somewhere in there.
Yeah, it's expensive. So
yeah, it's an investment.
So the Doors are made up of, obviously, the lead singer, Jim Morrison, keyboard player, Ray Manzarek, guitar player, Robbie Krieger, and the drummer, John Densmore. Famously, Ray Manzarek, especially in concert, he would play the electric piano or the organ with his left hand and play a bass piano with his right hand all at the same time.
Oh, wow.
And he did that in the studio as well, but they did have Robbie Krieger, the guitarist, play some bass on some of the tracks they recorded, just to beef them up a little. And they did bring in, I can't remember the guy's name, but they did bring in a session bass player to thicken up some of the tracks.
Oh, I see.
But it's kind of interesting to see him play that. A lot of people can't walk and talk at the same time. And, I've seen him playing one song, playing the piano with one hand, the bass piano with the other hand, and singing at the same time. So
incredible.
Yeah, he's a pretty amazing musician.
This is an era when musicians were really talented. You had to be able to do more than just, play the right power chords.
Well, and not only that, you couldn't just go to YouTube and look up a lesson. You couldn't get on Google and look up the chords or the tabs, you know what I mean? Yeah. You had to learn. You had to know how to play, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's get into this. First song on this, I'm sure most people are pretty familiar with, Break On Through to the Other Side, was actually the Doors' first single they ever released. Written mainly by Jim Morrison, but the other Doors did kick in and help with the music as always. Jim would always come in with the poetry in his mind, and he kind of had a sound he wanted to hear, and he kind of had to flesh it out to him, because Jim was not a musician as far as playing an instrument or anything. He just knew what he was hearing in his head, right?
Interesting.
So, like I said, their first single released, it only hit 126 on the U.S. charts. For some reason, it hit 64 in the U.K., so it was a minor hit in the U.K., but not very big in the U.S. I guess it depends on how you look at it. I mean, your very first single hitting 126, it's probably not that bad to have it out there, but
I'd be content with a single that I released going to 126, but then again, I'm not Jim Morrison.
Good point. So what's your initial thoughts on this song?
My initial thoughts on this song were, it's a rather heavy song. It's not heavy metal, but it is the beat of it, the guitar in it. It's a pretty heavy song. This isn't it's a hard rock.
Yeah, I mean, for the Doors, this is one of the first songs I learned how to play on guitar. And one thing I can say about Break On Through, is being a huge music lover and the Doors being one of my favorite bands of all time, I do find myself I shouldn't say not liking, but not wanting to hear the radio play songs quite as much as some of the deeper album tracks, because I've heard them so many millions of times. Break On Through is still that way, but it's one of the ones that are a little easier for me to hear because I just love the song. It's short and sweet. It does have the heaviness to it with, the organ, which the Doors for a lot of people are love or hate.
Yeah, for sure.
And I know a lot of people that love the Doors, but there's a lot of people that can't stand the organ, can't stand the electric piano. They just don't like the sound of it. Myself, I enjoy it.
Is this the band that really made the organ a popular instrument going into the 70s?
I don't really think the Doors were. I think in the manner they used it, yes, because they use it so prominently. And it was a, you go to the Beatles, for example. They used electric piano and organ in different songs and stuff, but it wasn't a staple. The Doors, it was a staple in every single song.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, it was one of their instruments. They were essentially a three-piece band with a lead singer without a bass player, essentially, and so you had the organ and the bass being played by Ray, and I think they're the first band to use it as a main instrument that I'm aware of or that I listen to, and I'm probably wrong, but it definitely is featured heavily, right? I mean, they use it on intros. They use it on, I mean, Light My Fire is a good example where they use it on, they do the whole solo through the, at least on the album cut, not on the single, but, and we'll get to that. But yeah, Break On Through is an excellent song. I've always loved it, still do. And I do like the heaviness of it. It's a perfect song to kick off the album, in my opinion.
Yeah, this was a very strong way to start off the album. I like this song, and this is, once again, a song that I had heard before.
Yeah.
It's pretty common. Most people know this song.
Yeah, anybody that's listened to any kind of classic rock, whether you like it or don't like The Doors, you at least are aware of Break On Through.
Yeah.
So moving on to the second song, Soul Kitchen, has an awesome piano entrance into it. I love the intro. It's another song written by Jim Morrison. He wrote about it. It's actually about a soul food restaurant named Olivia's that he frequented quite often, that was located in Venice Beach. I like this song. It starts out slow, but it has a really heavy-hitting, fast chorus.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on this song?
Yeah, this was a much more calm, more mellow song than Break On Through, so it was a nice contrast to the first track. But very soothing. Makes you kind of feel like, I mean, it makes sense that he's talking about like an all-night diner, or not. It's not necessarily an all-night diner because there is a closing time, and he sings about wanting to stay there all night.
Well, and famously, this is the song the Doors ended their concerts with. Would be kind of their grand finale song. It's time to go now. And things like that. So they played this at the end of their concerts quite a bit. But I do like how it starts slow. I do like the fast-paced chorus. But it's not a super heavy song. But it could be. I mean, it really could be. But it's another song I give 2 thumbs up to. I love it.
It was a great song. I thought it was kind of interesting when he gets into that. There was a kind of an interlude there where he starts to be repetitive, saying, "Learn to forget," over and over and over again. And I thought, that's a really interesting way that he's saying it, almost like he's telling you, hey, you need to remember that you need to forget. So how does one learn to forget if they're trying to learn it? I don't know. There was something in there that just seemed like it. And I've heard Jim Morrison do things like this before with words, where he says something, it just sounds like the message that he's sending. It's such a contradictory sentence. But
well, and sometimes I think, Morrison was obviously a wordsmith, and I think similar to what you've heard from John Lennon and things, is sometimes the words didn't even have to mean anything. Sometimes they were just a play on words. Sometimes they just fit into the song. Sometimes maybe they were just drunk or stoned and it didn't mean anything.
That's something I get about Jim Morrison too, is that he really seems like he's using his voice as an instrument. So the words don't necessarily have to be a conveyor of a thought in the way that like the spoken word is.
Yeah.
But he uses words more as like an instrument to make it sound nice in your head.
Well, and not a lot of Morrison's lyrics are literal, but at the same time, a lot of them are literal. So, but I think it's for us to decipher among ourselves what they really mean, because I don't think anybody's really going to ever know what they mean. Truly,
not now.
Yeah, not now. So, excellent song. Great start to the album for those 2 songs. The next song, The Crystal Ship.
Yeah, this one was completely out of left field for me.
Yeah, it's definitely a psychedelic type of song.
Yeah.
This was the B-side single to Light My Fire, which Light My Fire was their second single released, and we'll get to that in a minute. But The Crystal Ship is just a simple love song Jim Morrison wrote about his girlfriend. And it was inspired a lot by William Blake's poetry that Jim was a huge fan of. Yeah. But then again, like I said, a simple love song, but Jim, being a wordsmith as he is, takes it further and further, and it takes you on this psychedelic journey. So you don't know if, are we on acid? Is Jim on acid? Or is the song good enough to make you feel like that? You know, it's just a real surreal song, and I'll be honest with you, I love this song. It's one of my favorites.
It's a fun song to listen to, but it is trippy, and that very well might have been what Jim Morrison was going for with this song, is to try and see if he could create the effects of kind of that drunken stupor from being high, using just his using just his music. And so, and I think he did a good job, at least conveying that conveying that feeling.
Well, and you know, Morrison, like I stated earlier, you know, he wrote the lyrics, but a lot of the music, we got to give credit to Robbie, John, and Ray, because Jim would present these lyrics to him and say, I kind of want to have this sound, and they mess around a lot, and you know, they're the ones that really come up with all the music and all the effects on it, and it was a perfect marriage between these guys in this band, because they made some beautiful music, in my opinion. So
yeah, they did.
I think third song in a row, I give it another 2 thumbs up. Your take?
This one wasn't my favorite song, but I'm not really a druggie. If I was more of a druggie, I don't know. It kind of got a little bit out there for me. So this one wasn't my favorite, but you know, it wasn't a bad song. It wasn't irritating.
Yeah, and it's one of my favorite songs. I enjoy it. So, moving on to song 4.
Yeah, the 20th Century Fox.
Yeah, there you go. So another song written by Jim Morrison. Obviously, this one I think is more literal than, you know, his other songs have been so far on this album. I mean,
for being a play on words, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, she's a 20th century fox. I mean, I think she's saying she's a pretty good looking hot chick, you know?
Exactly. Using the lingo of the era.
So what are your thoughts on this song?
This song has a nice beat to it. I think using that 20th Century Fox, I mean, they were a big film company. They're still a big film company. And they're very iconic. I mean, most people would recognize the 20th Century Fox emblem and the music that went along with it. It's very fanfare type music, very triumphant music playing. And this song, it has a very similar kind of feeling, that a really good strong beat to it. You can almost see this girl just strutting down the sidewalk on Sunset Boulevard, just strutting her stuff. She knows she looks good, and he knows she looks good. And Wordsmith, he did a great job letting you know that. Yeah,
and it was a literal song. I wouldn't say this is my favorite song on the album, but I've always enjoyed it. It's a good little quick song. It's gets to the point. Like I said, the lyrics are literal, and it's a good song. I mean, obviously, if we were to redo it now, we'd have to change the name to 21st Century Fox. And fun little tidbit, when
their 20th Century Searchlight.
Well,
pictures.
Yeah, that too. When the Doors got back together with Ian Astbury, the 3 surviving Doors at the time, and formed the Doors again, they called themselves the Doors of the 21st Century.
Nice.
Yeah, so kind of interesting.
That works.
So now the next song.
The Alabama song.
Yeah, Alabama song, Whiskey Bar. Very interesting. This song obviously was not written by the Doors. This was an English song written by Bertolt Brecht and translated to German. It was used for a 1930 opera, Rise and Fall of the City of Mahogany.
Yeah.
And I've never heard the original version of it, but I would like to, just to see where it goes.
That would be interesting to see what the original is. Because, I mean, just going off of the title of it, Alabama Song or Whiskey Bar, you start to think, well, this is going to be some sort of down-home, redneck, folksy...
but instead you get kind of that circus feel. That
it's very European.
Boom, boom, boom. It kind of reminds me of some kind of beer fest or something.
Exactly.
Oktoberfest theme song.
It sounds like Oktoberfest in Germany. Yeah,
I've never really considered this a strong Doors song. I kind of throw it in the same lane as, the Beatles obviously being one of my favorite bands. I throw it in the same lane as something like Obla Di Obla Da, because that is probably the Beatles song that I like the least. And that's actually probably giving it more credit than I like to, but I do not like Obla Di Obla Da. And this is kind of like that.
Yeah.
But I do like, like I said, I haven't heard the original, but I do like what the Doors did with it in some ways. It's interesting, and I will say this much. I've listened to it on their live albums, and it's much better live than it is on the album. I
see. Okay. This song, it's a fun song to listen to. It's got that beat. You get this. It's a song that almost paints a picture for you of this drunken guy just going from bar to bar. He's bar hopping, having a great time.
Yeah.
And it sounds like a carousel. It sounds like some sort of calliope organ at a carnival. It just sounds like he's having a great time, and this is the song that plays in the background to it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good filler song on the album. I don't always skip it, but I don't actively search it out. I consider this the weakest song on the album.
Okay, and I think that's fair.
Where do you place it?
I'd put it towards the bottom, yeah.
Yeah.
But then again, I'm not a huge drinker, so I guess if I was into bar hopping, this would be my theme song. But
yeah, kind of interesting. But, it's an okay song, but, not my favorite on the album. I'd put it at the bottom. So we finish out the side one of this album with, obviously, the Doors' largest hit they ever had. The second single they released, Light My Fire, was actually a song written by Robbie Krieger, or Krieger as you know him.
Okay.
I say Krieger to make people happy, but it is Krieger.
Okay, well, it's spelled Krieger, so I would assume Krieger, but
it's Krieger.
Okay.
But anyways, Jim did contribute a verse to it, the part about the funeral pyre, the kind of the weird part. But
yeah, that's something that it shows that Jim Morrison is well read. I mean, that he uses a lot of poetic or a lot of old words.
Yeah, I mean, Jim, from the very beginning when he was young, he was into heavy literature is the best way to put it. Into things that young kids weren't into, and he continued that. He was very well read, so definitely could freak people out with the words he knew. Yeah,
the funeral pyre being, I believe it's a Norse tradition.
It is.
When someone would die, they'd set them on a wooden raft covered in combustible objects, mostly pile of firewood, and then you'd set it adrift and set it ablaze. So this was, I feel like this song was inspiring pyromaniac since 1967 is what I got written down on my notes here.
That's a good way to put it. So this single was released in January 67, essentially right after the album came out. Break On Through, the first single was released before the album came out. But, this was the Doors' first number one hit. It spent 3 weeks at number one on the Billboard Top 100. The funny thing about the song is the album song was over 7 minutes long. They had to cut it down to 3 minutes for the single.
Oh.
They basically cut out the huge...
That's right. In the middle of this, there is a huge instrumental section where there's no singing. And
it's mostly organ, electric piano.
Yeah.
And they cut all that out for the single. I think pretty much nowadays when you hear it on the radio, you get that. Very rarely do you hear the single version anymore, but it is still out there.
Yeah.
Another interesting thing is it was sped up a little bit. And so on some of the later releases you get, they are a little bit longer versions.
I see.
So, and they do sound a tiny bit different. So
it seems like Jim Morrison's one of these guys that does not mind filling time with music.
I think he probably was happier filling time with women and booze.
Okay. But, I mean, he's got some songs that are way long.
Yeah, well, and keep in mind, this isn't even his song.
Yeah. True.
This was written by Robbie Krieger, the guitar player, who wrote a lot of their famous songs, unbeknownst to people. The Doors, for their first 3 albums, released every song as written by the Doors. You know, it didn't, even though most of them were written by Jim Morrison, they just said the Doors. When Soft Parade come along, their fourth album, Jim didn't perhaps like, I guess that's the way to put it, some of the songs Robbie had written, so they actually changed the songwriting credits on that album to who they were written by.
Oh, okay.
So, but anyways, they ended up performing this Light My Fire, famously on the Ed Sullivan Show in September of 67.
Oh, the scandal.
Yeah, well, somewhat of a scandal. It depends on if you look at history or if you look at Oliver Stone's version of history. But the band was actually asked by, you know, Ed Sullivan's team not to say the line, you know, girl, we couldn't get much higher. They wanted to change it to girl, we couldn't get much better.
Oh, what a prude.
Well, at the time, saying high or higher, you know, was obviously a drug reference. And
yeah, I mean, I can picture Ed Sullivan looking at Jim Morrison. I know what you kids these days are talking about when you say you couldn't get much higher. You're talking about using the pot
exactly.
and the dope.
Exactly, and that's probably what it was going on. But, you know, the Doors promised they would change it, which they didn't.
Yeah, which is rock and roll.
Yeah, and the funny thing about it is, and I've watched the recording of it, you see a little smirk from Robbie Krieger, which that's about all, and Jim just sings the song like normal with the word higher in it. You know, in the Oliver Stone depiction of it, Jim screams out higher, basically, and there's a big debacle. But the one thing Oliver Stone's movie did get right is, you know, the Ed Sullivan team told them that they were never going to play the Ed Sullivan Show again, and Jim politely told them, we already have.
Yeah.
So, you know, they played
Water
it.
under the bridge, man.
They did what they wanted, and there it went. So, you know, when singles were a thing, obviously in the 60s and part of the 70s, this was the Doors' #1 selling single of all time, sold over 1 million copies of just the single itself.
Yeah.
So, huge, and the song is also inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame. And that doesn't happen to a lot of songs, but in 1998 this song was put into the Grammy Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I think if anybody that listens to this song, especially anybody that was alive during the late 60s and the drug culture came in, and all of a sudden, you know, it kind of turned from like the beach party 60s to the psychedelic parties. This is a song that really just captures a moment in time really well, and I think that's why it rocketed to #1 and stayed there for so long.
Well, it does. I think it hit everything at the right time, you know. And I will say most times when I listen to this album, I do skip this song. And it's not because I don't love it, because I do love the song, but out of all the Doors songs, this is the one that you hear on the radio.
Oh, it's overplayed for sure. Yeah.
And I don't know if I'm doing that as self-preservation on the song to not overplay myself on it or whatever, but I'm like that with a lot of things. You know, it's like when you go to Leonard Skinner or something, I don't want to hear Sweet Home Alabama.
Yeah.
You know, you just get tired of the radio play songs. At least I do, because I still listen to this music very, very often. So, you know, it is for what it is. But Light My Fire, it closes out side 1 of the album.
Yeah.
So if we flip that album over, we start off with another song not written by the Doors. This is a cover song of a Willie Dixon song, kind of set to some 12-bar blues. It is Backdoor Man. It's a good song. I particularly like this song when they play it in concert because it's more raw.
Yeah.
But it's got a good tone to it. I love the way it beats in.
Yeah.
It's kind of a heavy blues song. What are your thoughts on Backdoor Man? It's
really got a catchy tune, easy to dance to. You can see why this is a good hit for the Doors. The term Backdoor Man. You know, he's talking, I believe, about the derriere. But, I think Jim Morrison likes.
This is I don't know if that's the way I'd put it. I don't know if this song was written that way, or, you know, I don't know the history behind the song, and we get into a little of the few details on the songs and stuff, but I do not know this song by Willie Dixon. I don't know the original version, and I need to go listen to it.
We probably should have listened to the original by Willie Dixon just to see how much of these lyrics are there. Because I'm not sure when he talks about, hey, you eat your dinner,
Eat your pork and beans.
Yeah.
I eat more chicken than any man ever seen.
Yeah, which I am. Is he referring to cunnilingus or analingus?
Well, I don't know, but maybe this is just a restaurant and he goes in the back door.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, you're taking it way further than I would.
I'm thinking pork and beans means a penis and testes.
Okay, well, I don't know.
I think this song is loaded with euphemism. At least it is in my heart, and that's what I'm going with.
Okay, fair enough. So what do you give this song?
This song's in the spirit that I'm taking it in, I'm going to put this one up pretty high. It's a good song.
Yeah, I mean, and
it's a fun song.
And you like Meatloaf.
Yeah.
And I don't mean the
singer.
Yeah, the singer.
I do.
So you like different
I do
songs.
like different funny songs, yeah.
Yeah, and I really do like Backdoor Man. The only thing, I'm not a huge cover person, so when these bands do these covers like Alabama Song and Backdoor Man, now Backdoor Man is a more straightforward rock and roll blues song as opposed to Alabama Song, and so I like it more than that, but it holds its place where it does. It would probably fall to my second favorite song on this album.
Okay.
But I still enjoy it, and I do enjoy it much more on the live album. It's a little stronger. So
yeah.
So we go to the next song, which I know is another song that you had never heard.
Yeah, this one was new for me, and I liked it.
Yeah, this is I Looked at You. This is a song written primarily by Jim Morrison, but co-written by, the keyboardist Ray Manzarek as well. It's a good little kind of love song,
Yeah.
It doesn't have a lot of heavy guitar in it or whatever, but it moves at a good pace.
Yeah, this song, I think the pace that it moves at shows you that life moves pretty quickly. And this song it tells me that it's all about like this missed opportunity, that there was an opportunity for a love when, in a look. Like, this is a song about someone that you see walking down the street and you pass them and you take a second glance and they take a second glance at you and there's that chemistry connection.
Yeah.
But you don't say anything. You just keep going about your day.
Possibly this song is the conclusion of what happened when they went and talked to the 20th Century Fox.
It could be, yeah.
I looked at you, you looked at me,
yeah,
and then you didn't want to have anything to do with me, essentially.
Yeah, essentially. I mean, that's just kind of it.
Yeah, it is what it is, right? But it's an excellent song. I've always enjoyed it. It's not a song I skip on here ever.
Yeah.
I mean,
I can see why. It is a good song.
Well, and it's not a song you're going to hear on the radio. Maybe on
sure.
deep tracks on Sirius XM or something like that.
But this was a new one for me.
But it's a good song and it's a strong song. I don't have any. I haven't heard any live versions of this, but I think it would be a good live song.
From the sounds of things, let's see. I think you've played a couple of live things for me before from the Doors. And I think you're right. Jim Morrison, he's a wildcat when he's live.
Well, and I will say about this song, this is probably the most, if you take Alabama Song out of it, because it's just kind of strange, but I Looked at You as probably the least Doors-like song on the album.
Yeah, very much so. It's very different.
In fact, it's kind of surprising to me they didn't release this song as a single. Mm-hmm. Because it seems kind of like your popular song, and I don't know how well it would have done, but it seemed to fit into that mode. But that's easy to say now, right?
Yeah.
So, but I do give this song, I don't know if we have a rating system.
Maybe we'll have to come up with one.
We'll have to come up with one, but right now I've only got 2 thumbs, so I give the song 2 thumbs up. Okay. And I always enjoy hearing it. How about you?
I'll give it a 1.5.
Can you do that?
Do you want me to
You're not going to Backdoor Man again, are you?
I am the back door man. Yeah, putting two. No, you can't fit two full thumbs up there.
Okay, well, let's move on to the next song.
I think I am the Fonzie. Hey.
We'll move on to the next song, End of the Night. Now, this is a very surreal,
Yeah.
dark, makes you feel like you're in a dark old building
Yeah.
with the rain pouring outside. It's got a weird feel to it. The funny thing
It's
is
trippy. Yeah.
they chose this song to be the B-side of the Break On Through single, which is a really strange selection to me.
I think that they would have done better if they had done I Looked at You as the flip side of the.
Or even 20th Century Fox.
Or
something
yeah,
like
one of
that.
those. Yeah.
Yeah, End of the Night. First of all, it was written by Jim Morrison.
Yeah.
I do like the song. I do. It's a really slow,
Yeah.
spooky, moving song. I don't know. It's just got a surreal feeling to it.
It's got an existential crisis, is what it feels like. I mean, it's a really trippy song to listen to.
Yeah, it's kind of an E minor, A minor. It's a I don't know. It's just got a weird feel to it. And Jim derived the title from a 1932 French novel, Journey to the End of the Night. So he ripped that off straight off of that. Mm-hmm. But
that explains a lot about this song.
Yeah, and I've never read that French novel.
Me either, but the fact that it's, this is a novel from his childhood, I guess. Well, let's see. Would he have been alive in the 30s?
No.
That's a little before his time. So Jim Morrison, well-read guy. Not only is this a French novel, but this is like before his time French novel.
Yeah, he was born in like 43 or 44.
Yeah,
so
this is like
I think he was 24
decade
when
before.
he was recording this.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the kind of stuff he was into, you look at him as a quintessential rock star in leather pants, and long hair and out there doing this and that, but he was a high intellect. And unfortunately that got him into more trouble than it should have, but but this is a good song. It's really slow. This song gives me the feeling kind of almost like this song belongs on their second album, Strange Days, and I know we haven't done that album yet. You haven't listened to that album, but this song feels more like that. And I guess that kind of makes sense because a lot of the Strange Days songs were songs they were playing the whole time in this session too. So they were just leftover songs, the ones they decided not to record on here, right? But to me, it kind of fits in with that a little more.
Yeah, this is a song that definitely feels like that interim between world wars in France.
It gives you a creepy feeling, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Take the highway to the end of the night. It's just a strange song, but it's a good song. To me, it's quintessential Doors sound. Just the way the organ, the keyboard goes in there. It's a good song, and I do enjoy it.
Yeah.
So we move on to another song written by Jim Morrison. This is another song that was one of the first songs I learned how to play on guitar as well. Funny thing is, I don't remember it now, but Take It As It Comes. Go real fast, go real slow.
Yeah, that's really the message of this song is to move slow and enjoy life every opportunity you can.
Yeah, and Jim Morrison had actually dedicated this song to the Maharishi, who he had attended a lecture of. Maharishi, obviously, famously, where the Beatles went to the retreat and wrote the biggest portion of the White Album.
Yeah.
And, Jim had, attended a lecture and kind of brought that away from the Maharishi that, life is this, just take it as it comes, Go real fast, go real slow, do whatever you do, but just take it as it comes.
Yeah.
This is one of my favorite songs on the album, and this would have also been a good single to release with Break On Through.
I would say so.
Yeah, so, I don't know, I mean, it's a good song, it's just kind of a contemporary rock song, with a few chords in it, but it's got good pace to it. It's got good lyrics to it.
It's got a good feel.
Yeah, and I think, this one's more of a literal sense of Jim writing, that, I don't think there's any hidden meaning to this song at all, but it's
pretty straightforward.
It's got a good feel, it's upbeat, and it's just a really good song.
Yeah.
So I give that one 2 thumbs up too.
Oh, absolutely. That was a great song.
So now we move on to the finale of the album.
The end of the album.
No, the end.
Oh,
What?
the end. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, the 12-minute...
Yeah. Another euphemism. I'm just going to always assume that when Jim Morrison's writing things, it's always a euphemism for sex.
Well, that could be.
Mm-hmm.
So you think the end has to do with the backdoor man. So you're thinking rear end.
Probably.
Well,
He's got things like, I think he's singing about blue balls.
he's singing about blue buses.
That, but...
Well, you take it how it is. But
Yeah.
anyways, this is another song written by Jim Morrison. It started out as just a little short, simple love song, breakup song with his girlfriend at the time. But as the Doors played it more and more in the clubs, especially in the Whiskey A Go-Go, it turned into kind of their epic, their epic song where it had huge solos over it and just real droning keyboard to it. And it's
so that's what happened. That's why this is 12 minutes.
Yeah, it really, it really took on its own life as they kept playing it. But it was originally, this is the end, my beautiful friend, the end, it was a simple love song saying goodbye. And there's a lot of question who it was about, but there's a book about Jim Morrison and his love, and pretty sure it was about Mary, a gal that he had been, quite friendly with for some while, but he said it was time for him to go and pursue other things, and that's kind of what they think it's about. And it is really a pretty song. It starts out pretty.
Yeah.
It's got a lot of guitar,
It's also got a very foreboding feel about it because, it is the end.
Yeah, it does. It does, and I think you get that with the keyboard a lot, though. I think you get that because it sounds so... What's the word with the keyboard? Almost like Dracula's castle or something, It's like
like the Phantom of the Opera sitting in there playing away on his organ.
Well,
right?
and I guess you hit it right. Foreboding. Yeah. That's probably the best way to... It's just haunting.
Yeah, exactly. Because, when you're going through a breakup, this is the way it feels. Is like, okay, well, I have to break up with you, but in order to get on the other side of this where we're broken up, we got to endure whatever exchange needs to happen. But, you guys say whatever you need to say, I gotta say whatever I need to say, but how am I going to get from here to the other side of that?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and it is foreboding.
Now, I would say The End has always been one of my favorite songs.
Yeah.
And I don't know why, because musically it's simplistic. I think it's just because it's so haunting. And, to get to kind of the big thing about this song is the Oedipal section.
Yeah. That was a little bit of a surprise.
Yeah, where he goes into the room where his sister lives, and then he, pays a visit to his brother, and then he walks on down the hall, right?
Yeah.
And, he opens the door, looks inside, right?
Yeah. And his father's the only one that responds to him.
Yeah, he's like, "Father, yes, son, I want to kill you." Yeah. So, does he kill him? I've always wondered.
He wants to.
He tells him he wants to, which isn't a very good surprise tactic.
Well, this is also a very Oedipal thing as well, is to kill the father, right?
Well, to kill the father. And
then he says, "Mother." Well, at least on this album, he didn't say it. But.
He just says, "Mother, I want to all night long, baby." Yeah, in some of the cleaned up versions and live versions, you do hear it a little stronger. This song was famously used in the movie Apocalypse Now, and in that they do a little bit different mix where you hear some helicopter propellers, but they're kind of slowed down, so you get that.
Yeah.
But then you hear the "Mother, I want to fuck you," all night, baby. And it's pretty crazy. And, at the time, and I guess the first time they played it and he sang out that lyric, because they used to jam out all kinds of different versions of songs. But the first time he did that in the Whiskey, and this is another thing, apparently, that Oliver Stone's movie, The Doors, gets correct, is It had a pretty huge hit, and they actually got fired for it
Oh,
because you didn't say that kind of shit. You know what I
No.
mean?
Yeah,
you
that's not polite.
No, it's not polite to say you're going to kill your dad and have sexual relations with your mother. And I'm not even sure what he did to his brother and sister. But the funny thing is, Jim did have a brother and a sister.
yeah.
So, I mean, he was interjecting. This wasn't just like third person. I mean,
And he talks about the killer walks through the house, right?
the killer awoke before dawn.
Yeah.
He put his boots on.
Yeah.
And then he says he took a face from the ancient gallery and he walked on down the hall.
Interesting.
Yeah. And he came to a door and he looked inside. You know, so it's kind of weird. And the funny thing about Jim's family, you know, is going into the Doors' popularity, he told everyone in interviews that his parents had died, even though they hadn't. In fact, famously, Jim, you know, in 1967 when the Doors hit until 1971 when he was dead and buried in Paris, he never saw his mother or father again. And his mom tried to get into multiple concerts with his sister
Oh, really?
and things, and Jim wouldn't see him. So,
That's a shame.
yeah, so I don't know where that comes from, but it's an excellent song if you just take it for what it is.
Yeah.
Similar to End of the Night, it's very, you know, very mysterious and
Yeah.
and
Because it feels like it's symbolic and that he's trying to convey a message, but he's not. It's not as straightforward as some of the other songs.
well, exactly. And you know, I've done a lot of research on Jim Morrison, read a lot of books, watched a lot of documentaries, about as much as you can do at this point, right?
Yeah.
And I really think Jim's main meaning is this is a simple love song turned into a long epic with music, you know, interludes and things. I think all it is shock value.
Yeah.
You know, he had famously done
Which
a
is
lot
why I think everything he says is a euphemism.
well, it could be, but I don't know if I agree with you on Backdoor Man simply because he didn't. He didn't write it. But then again, he had probably heard the song and thought, "I know what I want that to mean."
Yeah, for sure.
You know, but the end is an amazing song. It was a little bit different, you know, for somebody to record a 12-minute song on an album. It would have been interesting to see if they could have turned it into like a 3 or 4 minute single.
Yeah.
Because it really is a pretty song. It's simple chords. I think it's a D chord with an E minor. I think they're augmented a little bit or something, but they're simple chords on the guitar, you know, and I would like to hear it as a single. I think it would be a good single.
I think, clean this thing up a little bit. Clean it up is a horrible way to say it, but just concise it a little bit down. Cut it back from.
Well, as a single,
what
you
it
still
is.
need this version as well.
Yeah, you do. It just feels like this version. I mean, when we start up as a simple breakup song and then end up with this, it seems like the Blue Bus got, they stopped and asked for directions on the way west.
Well, yeah, he talks about a blue bus. He talks about a 7-mile long snake, which that's a pretty damn long snake.
Yeah, and the King's Highway, which El Camino Real in California, I believe it's I-5 now.
Oh, maybe the 7-mile snake actually is the highway.
It could be.
I mean, that
ride the snake,
yeah. I mean, or maybe.
which is another euphemism.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure it is. Ride the snake, baby.
Yeah.
7 miles.
Yeah, there was a line in there. He says, all the children are insane, waiting for the summer rain.
Yeah.
And I feel like that, what he's saying there is, okay, school kids are waiting for the summer break to come because in the summertime, what falls from the sky in the form of rain is summer romances. So
See, and I get a lot of this, and I thought
gotta break up with her in order to get ready for your summer romance. You gotta be a free man.
so you start chasing those 20th century foxes.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, and I think, I find this with a lot of the Beatles lyrics, a lot of the Doors lyrics is, you can talk to 100 different fans and you're going to get a different meaning out of it. And I think that's kind of in a way what they meant.
Yeah.
When they wrote these things. Maybe they didn't even mean it. Maybe it wasn't even on purpose.
So maybe this says more about me than it does about the song. This is like a Rorschach test.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned about how everything you read into has sexual connotation to
And
it.
it's all about butt sex. Yeah.
Yeah, that bothers me a little bit. That's how you're finding everything, but that's fine.
Okay,
I mean,
yeah.
it is what it is.
Well, you're on that side of the room. I'm on this side, so.
True. So for me, The End is one of the top 2 or 3 strongest songs on this album, and I think that's because of the length and because of it. This song is amazing. Also live, he does different little versions in The End than he does on the album version. So it's kind of interesting, and we'll probably review some of their live albums going forward.
Yeah. I mean, it really is a good song I mean, it's long, like I said, but
7 miles.
but I don't necessarily want to disparage the song for being so long. It is a long song, kind of feels long, but it's a pretty song.
So, in my opinion, this is not my favorite Doors album. It holds a special place in my heart because it was the first one I got and the first one I devoured multiple times over and over and over. Well, I say it's not my favorite, but some days it is. I like changing my mind, and that goes with my mood.
You're free
but
to do that.
It's definitely one of my favorite 2 or 3 Doors albums. Of course, they only made 6 studio albums with Jim Morrison, 2 without him, which aren't even in print any longer. But it falls from first to third frequently for me, I guess.
Okay.
But I think, as far as the album, it holds up really well today. And I think the reason it does is because they're good. Most of them are good upbeat songs.
Yeah.
I think the piano or the keyboard, as you want to call it, it holds up really well because that's the Doors thing, right? And I think it just epitomizes the sound and the times of the 60s. And that's great in a way, but it's just as easy for me to listen to nowadays. But I am stuck in the past a little bit. What are your thoughts on it as holding up nowadays as a classic album?
I guess this is something that I've always been surprised by when I listen to albums, is that there's certain songs that I like better on the albums that I never hear on the radio.
Would you think that? Do you think that's the same theory as me? As you're just tired of hearing some of them on the radio, so sometimes they're better when you hear them for the first time?
There might be some of that, but honestly, I think that some of these are just really better songs, and I don't know why they don't get more playtime. I don't know why they aren't more popular, because like I said, or like we said before, certain songs, like why did they put End of the Night on the B-side of the single?
Well, and here's the other thing too. Break On Through was released and it reached 126. If they were to release Light My Fire first and then Break On Through later, Break On Through probably would have been a number 1 hit.
Probably so.
And so a lot of it's about band momentum too, right? But yes, End of the Night was a very, very strange, especially for popular music and a band barely breaking into the scene. That, to me, like I said, 20th Century Fox or I Looked at You or even Take It As It Comes, those are much better singles.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, 20th Century Fox is a fun song.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of songs on here that are more fun to listen to than some of the other ones. But I think it holds up just fine. I think it's very iconic of the time.
It is, and it's. I think it is one of the greatest debut albums. The fact that there's only 2 covers on this thing, which at the time, covers were a huge thing, and so the Doors had a lot of their own music. They had, they come in with twice as many songs, and like I said, it wasn't very much longer that they went in and recorded Strange Days with the same group of songs they've been playing, live for a long time, and it's a very strong album, probably my favorite.
Okay.
And we'll get to that another time, but that's been good for our first review. Obviously, we're not experts on these. We're not going to get into all the little details about the studio equipment they used and what day and minute and hour they recorded and who had a cold. And
we don't need to do a deep dive.
No, there's plenty of people out there to do that. I think our vision is going to be, okay, we're going to see this from the side of someone that's been listening to this music for years and years and someone that's hearing a lot of it for the first time or hearing it in depth.
Yeah. So you go ahead and feel free as a listener to send in as much hate mail as you want to me for being so ignorant and not knowing more about these songs and these bands. I can take it. I've been to public school.
Yes, you can. And in the meantime, we'd certainly appreciate you going and giving us a review or a follow on any of the podcasting platforms you follow. If you've got any albums or bands or music topics you want us to cover, send us an email.
Yep.
We've got an email. It's classicvinylpodcast@gmail.com. Visit us on Instagram, Classic Vinyl Podcast.
Yeah, keep an eye out for our Instagram as well, because when we post things out there, it's going to be some really good images and pictures of things from the 60s and 70s, classic things that you're going to want to see.
And we've got thousands of albums and topics to review, but anybody sends in anything they want to hear or don't want to hear, or whatever, let us know. Let us know what you want to hear and what you'd like us to do, and we'd be more than happy to do it. But until then, we appreciate you giving us a listen.
Yeah.